Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Bhajajana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Shishima. His Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Pradikacharya Ashtotar Shishima. His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur ki Jai. Anantakoti Vaishnava ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. So, any idea where we are? This marker was nowhere near the... It was in the 7th chapter somewhere. Somehow we've got... We did the 9 gates. We did the 9 gates. Yeah, 14 it is. Yeah. Jamal, are you there? To try to close some doors. Okay, it's kind of quiet. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I just want to make sure. Could be a little softer. I just want to make sure that all the doors are closed, door to the kitchen. Yeah. Okay. And the main thing is the door to the altar. But yeah. Now everything is quiet as a mouse. So let's see if it stays that way. Okay. So. No. You have to wait for me to try to chant it, you see, because I have to announce it first. On this 22nd day of July 2019 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. We are in Chapter 5, entitled Karma Yoga, Action and Krishna Consciousness, text number 14, page 241. And since we're such a small group, I'm going to wait for you to get locked and loaded there. Page 241. 241. Got it? Okay. Nakartritvam nakarmani lokasya sujati prabhu nakarma padasangyogam svabhavastu pavartate nakartritvam nakarmani lokasya sujati prabhu nakarma padasangyogam svabhavastu pavartate nakartritvam nakarmani lokasya sujati prabhu nakarma padasangyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Nakartritvam nakarmani lokasya sujati prabhu nakarma padasangyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Nakartritvam nakarmani lokasya sujati prabhu nakarma padasangyogam svabhavastu pravartate. Na, never, kartritvam, proprietorship, na, nor, karmani, activities, lokasya, of the people, swijati, creates, Prabhu, the master of the city of the body. Na, nor, karma pala, with the results of activities, sangyogam, connection, svabhavaha, the modes of material nature, to, but, pravartate, act. The embodied spirit, master of the city of his body, does not create activities, nor does he induce people to act, nor does he create the fruits of action. All this is enacted by the modes of material nature. Purport. The living entity, as will be explained in the 7th chapter, is one of the energies or natures of the Supreme Lord, but is distinct from matter, which is another nature called inferior of the Lord. Somehow the superior nature, the living entity, has been in contact with material nature since time immemorial. The temporary body or material dwelling place which he obtains is the cause of varieties of activities and their resultant reactions. Living in such a conditional atmosphere, one suffers the results of the activities of the body by identifying himself, in ignorance, with the body. It is ignorance acquired from time immemorial that is the cause of bodily suffering and distress. As soon as the living entity becomes aloof from the activities of the body, he becomes free from the reactions as well. As long as he is in the city of the body, he appears to be the master of it, but actually he is neither its proprietor nor controller of its actions and reactions. He is simply in the midst of the material ocean, struggling for existence. The waves of the ocean are tossing him, and he has no control over them. His best solution is to get out of the water by transcendental Krishna consciousness. That alone will save him from all turmoil. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So, the living entity is not the proprietor, doesn't have proprietorship, nor is he the doer, doesn't do activities. doesn't create activities. Basically, he's just in great illusion. We're all in great illusion about our proprietorship and our doership in this world. And that's what constitutes our conditioned life, is this illusory identification with the body and things related to the body. It's quite remarkable to think about this, because all of the things that are given so much importance because we are born into a certain family, a certain era of time, we have a certain language, we identify not only with the body but with the race we're in, with the land we're in, with the family, all of these different things. And it's no more substantial than the bubbles in the ocean. The bubbles don't last very long, they last a few seconds. Our body lasts a few years, but basically have the same nature. They have a certain structure, a certain integrity for a limited amount of time, and then they cease to exist as if they never existed. And what's the ultimate import and significance of it all? Nothing. It's just like we place significance on things out of illusion, and then we move on to something else. Just like in our own lives. Now, you can look back on 6, 7 decades, and all the things that you placed importance on at different times in your life. When you're 7 years old, because nowadays there's a whole different, array of things that you can feel enthused about. I often think about these video games, which are really a real powerful force in the world. The more money is spent on them than movies, if you know that. And it's the same idea of losing yourself, in this fantastic so-called reality. And that becomes more important to you than your humdrum, gray, so-called real existence. It's a movie on top of a movie. It's an illusion on top of illusion. Your ordinary existence is also illusory, but it's drab and dull. So let me get absorbed in this game, and it has a different quality than a movie, because you're not just an observer, you're a participator. I try to identify as the hero, And now, of course, they make it more and more realistic. I just learned a new acronym, VR. Virtual reality. It's the biggest thing going, virtual reality. You've ever seen where they have put the masks on, And it's even more real. It's much more real than a movie, even more real than. But it's a good metaphor for what ordinary life is. It's just all virtual reality. It's not real reality. I mean, that's what the whole idea of the Vedanta Sutra is. Tato Brahma Jigyasa. Now you should inquire into the real thing, Brahman. Not all of this phantasmagoria of the modes of nature and the waves of material energy that come and go and just pass off into infinity, into oblivion. So that's what this is about. The living entity, we don't really do anything. How does that work? We're just desiring. We're under this illusion, and we identify with the body, and we desire. Like, we do things all the time, right? I'm picking up the kartals, I'm playing, I'm taking rest, I'm eating something, whatever. But actually, what am I actually doing? I'm just desiring these things according to the impulses that are coming from my gross and subtle body and my environment. And a desire comes, okay, I have to be over here at this time, I'm hungry, or something, I want to meet that person, I don't want to meet that person, whatever. And all these are impelling us one after another to do this, go here, do this, breathe, right? It's a whole complex of things. But what are you actually doing? If I want to pick up this cup of water, right? So many things have to happen. There's an impulse, because this was just a test. But if I'm actually thirsty, so that impulse goes in my brain. Okay, I know there's a cup of water over there. I have full faith that actually someone put some water in there. Sure enough, there is water in there. And so the brain, what happens, right? The soul is the one who's desiring. The body itself is unconscious. So I'm desiring that my thirst that I perceive, because I'm connected to this body. I'm not actually thirsty, but the body's thirsty, and I'm thinking I'm thirsty. So I say, okay, let's get the water. So like without thinking of it, you know, the impulse, the hand goes out, the muscles are going on, the chemical reactions are going on to make pour the water, put it down. What did I actually do? I just desired something happen, and then the willing sort of took place, and the arm, you know, everything was in place to actually let it happen. If I'd had a stroke, I couldn't do it. You know, I want it, but I can't do it. Can you get it for me, Marcia? So then that's another way of fulfilling the desire. So this is the way things go on and on like that. And after each day, you know, eventually you get so tired, you know, and you take rest. Then you live in a dream world. That's another reality. And you could be a different place, different person. You could be fulfilling desires or getting away from fears, dealing whatever. And you basically forget that in the morning, usually. Maybe little pieces of it you remember. And you're back into this. Probably once, it's very illuminating. But if you're interested in listening, you know, some Prabhupada lectures, I always thought that the most, I don't know, the ones he gave in the 22nd Avenue have a certain amazing flavor to them. Because Prabhupada is like on fire, you know. Suddenly he's got an audience, you know, who are listening after all this work, and he's got all this knowledge, and it's just bursting out of him, and it's so sincere, it just bowls you over. I mean, he's obviously speaking from experience, even though he's speaking of things that are beyond our own experience. God and, you know, the soul and all of these incredible, you know, important questions he's dealing with. So they're great. But then when he goes to Los Angeles in the 68 or 69, there's something called the Yoga System tapes, Yoga System lectures. He's speaking on the 6th chapter. And he systematically goes through. The devotees read the purports to him. He stops them sometimes, and he gives comments, talks. And because, you know, he realized they're in a battle here. You know, the yoga is becoming popular in America. And he already experienced Dr. Mishra's yoga studio and how people can be misled, and that, you know, he wouldn't let Prabhupada speak because he was an impersonalist. So he realized there's an interest in yoga, but people are being misguided. So he feels that it's an urgent task to really put everything straight, you know, what yoga is about. And here's the 6th chapter. It's all about yoga, dhyana yoga, the traditional yoga. So he talks about the living entity who's misguided and needs to control the mind. The mind itself, as Krishna says, is the enemy as well as the friend. All of this, the impulses and desires and everything resides in the mind. And we're just like observers. We're experiencing these thoughts and these desires that are coming and going. And so getting hold of that mind, somehow controlling it, fixing it on the Supreme, on Krishna, is really what yoga is all about. And you know, Prabhupada goes through, and it's just so illuminating. We made a book out of it called the Path of, what is it called? The Path of Perfection. We had the perfection of yoga, and anyway, we made it. There was a book made out of those lectures, and I don't know how, you know, if it's still in print now, but it's very illuminating. So this comes up, you know, again, that we have a choice to be aware of your actual situation. This is the first step. And Krishna gives so much instruction in the 2nd chapter. To change your perspective on what reality is, on what's important, on what we need to strive for. That's the basic first step of a seeker, someone who's looking for some resolution to the world, to his life's problems. So here it's going on in the 5th chapter, and in the 6th chapter he's going to talk about dhyana yoga. But we ourselves are like, this is coming up, you know, this is part of this chapter here. We're just watching, right? The self-realized soul, whether he's opening his eyes or doing this, he realizes he's not doing anything, that everything is going on by the modes of nature, and he's just observing. Now, this is a step toward the bhakta's realization, because a bhakta really wants to be a person. In other words, we want to be doers in the sense of we're using this body, not just observing it. We're not just passive observers. We want to use it as paraphernalia for serving the Lord. It's an opportunity, a great opportunity in the human form of life. Because of our intelligence, we're not simply permanently covered like the poor animals who are brain substance. They can't become enlightened. They can take prasadam and hear the holy name and be elevated in that way. But really to consciously control the senses and direct them, don't just control, that's a negative thing, but direct them and use them in the service of the Lord, that's not possible for lower animals. And for most people, it's just not possible that they're going to, they're too steeped in the modes and in their conditioning. So this is the challenge for awake, or now they're going awoke. What is it? Woke is a new thing. Are you woke? I stay abreast of things that are going on. Try to stay with the language, right? Yeah. That's traditional. That's from the 60s and the 70s. We're woke. Anyway. But it's good. We have to wake up. But then people don't know what that means, There's a saying in the Sanskrit Prabhu always quote, Uttishtata jagrata prapa varana bodhata. It's a great, one of these Upanishadic sayings. It literally means wake up, get up, wake up, and understand the great treasure you have as a human being. And this idea that, that ignorance is really the source of all our problems. Ignorance is very much explained as the source of sin in the Nectar of Devotion. What is it that produces sin? What is sin? Sin is simply activities against the laws of God. Sin is the source of suffering. When we act against God's wishes, against His laws, then we suffer. It's for our own good, ultimately. It's the suffering, we may not realize it at the time, or really accept it at the time. But it helps us to understand, provided we have access to real knowledge, that this place is not our home. We can't be happy here. It's a fool's errand to try to become happy and peaceful in this world. It's like you're in the middle of a forest fire, and you say, well, let's have a little picnic. Let's make the best use of a bad bargain. I mean, no, you have to try to get out. You can't be peaceful. So, what does the Shastra say? It says, of course, atato brahma jigyasa. But in the teachings of Rishabdev, I just keep coming back to these same teachings because they're so pertinent. Parabhavas tavada bodha jato yavan jigyasa atma tattvam. Parabhavas means defeat. We're kind of on a mission, and most of the people are being defeated. Means that they just have to face another birth and with suffering and old age, disease, and death. And oftentimes in this world, because sin is so prominent and people are so ignorant, that they'll perform activities that are so sinful they'll lose the human form of life. It's a great tragedy, really. At least if you're able to be pious, do something for others, be kind. As Krishna says in the 12th chapter, all right, if you can't do bhakti, at least don't be selfish, egotistical. Be kind to others, give the fruits of your activity. The whole problem is that people become attached to the fruits of their action. And they become attached to fruits that they can't get. It's the attachment that's the problem. You may be poverty-stricken, and you can be the greatest saint, because you're not attached to anything, and you feel free. Or you can be poverty-stricken and be the most miserable person, because you're totally attached to the fruit of things. It's all a question of your consciousness. So here in the fifth canto, fifth chapter, Rishabdev says, first he says that it's foolish to just be engaged in sense gratification, because you're sure to perform sin, vikarma, if you have no reference to any kind of cultural or ethical structure. And that's, most people are living that kind of life. And so you're sure to get another body, which is sure to produce suffering. So what's the alternative? So he says, parabhavas tavada bodha jato. Yavana jigyasa. This word jigyasa appears in the first verse of first sutra of the Vedanta Sutra. One should be curious, inquisitive to the absolute truth and the absolute good and how I can achieve it and how I can get out of this dilemma. So he says, Parabhavas, you will always be defeated. Means you won't move 1 inch toward liberation, and you'll stay mired in this suffering of the material world, as long as you don't inquire into the truth of the self. Because the source of your defeat is ignorance. You see the logic there. Parabhavas tavat abodhajato. Abodhajato means born of ignorance. This parabhavas means defeat. Taking another birth. That's basically defeat. As long as you don't inquire into the truth of the self, you remain ignorant, and that ignorance will keep you bound up again and again. How does it work? Yavat kriyas. Kriya here means fruit of activity. So that fruit of activity creates a certain mentality in you to improve your fruit of activity. In other words, fruit of activity creates a mindset that's called karmatmaka, which means full of all kinds of material desires and material fears and anxieties and depressions caused by those unfulfilled desires. It's just a mess, Your mind is mired in the modes of passion and ignorance. And that mind is what is the engine of your reincarnation, of your transmigration and suffering. So he says, Yavat kriyas tavad idam mano, mind, by karmatmakam, yena sharira bandha. Yena is the instrumental. It means that materialistic mindset is what keeps you bound up to material body. So then he gives a solution. They never leave you high and dry. So he says, Eva mana karma vasham payunte abhidyavan ubadiyadam. It's first half of the verse, the last verse in the series of these three. He says, thus, karma vasham means that when the mind is impelled by these karmic activities, this fruit of activities, payunte avidyapmani, the soul is covered by ignorance, avidya, upadiyamani, and this acts in that way. So then he says, the sun comes up at the end here. Priti niyavan maya vasudeva namuchate dehi yogata. Priti means love. Now he comes to the bhakti part. It's not all just cultivating of knowledge and controlling the senses. It's priti niyavan. As long as you don't develop love for me and move toward that goal, he's identifying himself with Vasudeva. Priti niyavan maya vasudevi namuchate dehi yogena tavat. You won't become free from the bondage of this material body. And we should always remember that the material body includes the material mind, the gross and subtle body. So here, the attitude of the self-realized soul, he's been described in previous verses, he realizes, I'm not really doing anything. I am desiring, and my ordinary activities are taking place. If they don't take place for some reason, if I can't arrange it, then I'm not going to freak out about it, because I know that I'm eternal, and I'm passing through. But as Prabhupada explains in the purports here, it's not enough just to know that I'm not the body and I'm pure spirit. One actually has to learn how to act as spirit, and that's what the process of bhakti yoga is all about. We're in training here. We're training for moving toward, going along the path of bhakti, the bhakti marga, toward a realization of our actual eternal relationship with Krishna. Because any activity that you do with your mind or your body or intelligence that's really in relationship with Krishna, especially if you're fully aware of Krishna as you act and you're Krishna conscious, then it serves to awaken you to your actual nature, because that is our eternal nature. Jivera sotapoy krishnera nityadas. And it frees you from eons of bondage from previous karmic activities. This is the only way to really become free from the karma. Just understanding that I'm a spirit soul is not good enough, because we're more than spirits. We're not just a particle of consciousness. We're persons, and persons means activity and desires. If your activities and your desires are not being done in relation to Krishna, for his pleasure, and ultimately for our spiritual pleasure, that's how you experience it. Then it's a negative emotion. The impetus is one of fear. I fear. I don't want to be born again and suffer all these pains of material life, and therefore I'm not going to engage in any material activity. How long can you can maintain that? It's not possible. There has to be a positive way of using your senses, mind, and intelligence in relation to Krishna that the liberation comes as a byproduct. But what really happens is that you awaken to your actual eternal life, Satchidananda life. So that will become evident as these verses go on and the page goes on. He'll speak a lot eventually in this chapter of Brahma Nirvana, which was mentioned at the very end of the second chapter, and is a state of completely understanding oneself separate from the body, and it's more or less like Brahma Bhuta, which is characterized by natural joyfulness of the heart and no hankering for anything material, no lamenting for any negativity. That's a state. And in that state, Krishna says in the 18th chapter, Mad Bhaktim Labate Param. One attains real bhakti for me. That's the culmination, not just the Brahma Bhuta. But it's important to understand these, the difference here, between the soul and the body, and we're the master of the city of the body. But that's, we're masters in one sense, but really we understand, I'm not really the master. The modes of nature are moving this body. I'm just sort of watching everything. But beyond that, we're desiring to use the body in Krishna's service, which is the perfection. Okay, any discussion on these points? Question? Go ahead.
I'm reading the second canto.
Uh-huh.
And I'm in the part where it's talking about the creation of the universe.
Uh-huh.
But it said that 25% is material and 75% is spiritual of the whole universe.
Uh-huh.
So we're in the minority being material, having this material body.
Yes, we are.
And it's like there's
So many of us.
infinite numbers of the entities that are spiritual. But
Well, I mean, it's kind of hard to understand, what's 25% of infinity, That number is used, three quarters are in the spiritual world. They never come here. There's this division called Nitya Mukta, or Nitya Siddha, and Nitya Baddha. Now this is a way of, the use of the language is kind of a little mysterious, because Nitya means Nitya. Nitya means eternal. But Nitya, but if we're eternally bound here, then what's the point of us trying to go back to Godhead? If we go back to Godhead, we won't be bound anymore. From Nitya Baddha to Nitya Mukta, well, what happened to the word eternal? You see, it was being fudged, So that's why Prabhupada he has this phrase, time immemorial. In other words, it's been so long that we've been here. Many, many millions of lifetimes of Brahma, who lives 311 trillion, 40 billion years, and still we're going round and round and round. So we might as well be, eternally bound. It's as good as if we're eternal. That's a time immemorial. But there truly are souls in the spiritual world who have never been here and never will be here. They're like generally, really nitya mukta, eternally liberated. But it's important to realize, and this comes up nicely in the teaching to Sanatana Goswami in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where Lord Chaitanya, he's speaking the philosophy of the Bhagavatam, but he's always giving the essential truth, So Sanatana Goswami is asking him, who am I? He's giving an example of the questions you should ask when you meet someone who could be more qualified than Lord Chaitanya to answer it. But the Guru is, okay, who am I? Why am I suffering? If I don't know the answer to these questions, what's good of all my so-called knowledge? He was a great erudite scholar. And he was, he's already realized soul, but he's taking the role of the conditioned soul, of someone who's intelligently asking the question. And so Lord Chaitanya first praises him, says, you're already enlightened, you're just asking for the benefit of the consult. But then he answers the question, Jivera Swarupoy Krishnera Nityadas. Krishnera Tatasta Shakti Bheda Ved Prakash. So in that little couplet there, he's got a lot of information. So the first piece of information is that the Swarup, this idea of Swarup. Swarup means your actual form, beyond all of these changing forms, which is just like putting on clothes and taking them off. That's not your Swarup. What is the actual nature? Who am I eternally? as a soul. What is my real identity? That's your Swarup. And understanding that and living that is your Swarup Siddhi, the perfection of understanding and living in your Swarup. So he says very simply, what it's like, that's why we have the Krishna consciousness movement. Jivera Swarupoi, the Swarup, or the actual nature and form of the living entity, is to be an eternal servant of Krishna. Krishnera Nityadas. So that's our eternal form in Swarup. These are all changing forms. They're not our real, obviously. So then further he says, Krishnera Tatasta Shakti. We are Shakti. We're not Shaktiman. Shaktiman is the possessor of energy. But we're acting like that. We're Prakriti acting like Purusha. And that's our whole problem. So he's saying we are in the marginal position. So Krishna has different energies. He has the internal energies, which manifest the spiritual world and all the activity in the spiritual world, all the bliss, the bodies, of the coward boys, coward girls, everyone else. That's all spiritual energy. There's no tinge of ignorance there or suffering or anything. It's all light, and beauty, and love and bliss. But we're by nature spiritual. But because we're in this marginal position, we have the tendency to be influenced by the external energy, which is what manifests all of this material world. So the antaranga shakti means internal. The marginal, or tatasta, means on the borderline, like the beach there, that's sometimes covered with water. Something. And then the bahiranga means the external energy, which we're very familiar with. It's all around us. So that's part of our swarup, to be part of the marginal energy. And marginal means that we have a tendency or ability to be influenced by the lower energy. Even when we're in the spiritual world. This is our problem. Is that we're still marginal. We're eternally marginal. Tatasta Shakti, Jiva Tatasta Shakti. And then this kind of Lord Chaitanya's special contribution to the philosophies that have been formulated, Bheda Bheda Prakash. Everything, including ourselves, are simultaneously one with and different from Krishna. That Bheda means different, and Abheda means non-different. Bheda Bheda Prakash, with manifestations like that. So understanding those is very profound. So many, the trillions and countless quadrillions of living entities are happily living on Vaikuntha planets, of which there are many, many, many. Goloka Vrindavan, there are planets where Ram Bhaktas live, Ramchandra, and they like to worship Krishna in that form. But they're all Vaikuntha planets. Means without anxiety, there's no death, there's no birth. It's all eternal, internal energy. And then there are also countless material universes that are made. This is just one universe, and there's so many planets. We're on the earthly planet. There's higher planets with beings, the much better material condition. They live much longer, but they still die. There's lower planets. There's so much more suffering. There's hellish planets and all this stuff. So there's countless living entities in all different kinds of bodies, not just human bodies, who are not in the spiritual world. They're not in their swarup. They're in various levels of conditioning and ignorance. So that's what the calculation is. There's a good majority who are in this spiritual world. We're in the minority, but still there's so many of us. Who's counting? There's no point counting. Let's get out. Let's be counted as one of the ones who go back, which is rare. Anyway, all right. Let's read another verse. Okay, 15. Nadate kasyachit papam nachaiva sukritam vibhu agyanena vratam jnanam tena muyanti jantabaha. Nor does the Supreme Lord assume anyone's sinful or pious activities. Embodied beings, however, are bewildered because of the ignorance which covers their real knowledge. Purport. The Sanskrit word Vibhu means the Supreme Lord, who is full of unlimited knowledge, riches, strength, fame, beauty, and renunciation. He is always satisfied in himself, undisturbed by sinful or pious activities. He does not create a particular situation for any living entity, But the living entity, bewildered by ignorance, desires to be put into certain conditions of life, and thereby his chain of action and reaction begins. A living entity is, by superior nature, full of knowledge. Nevertheless, he is prone to be influenced by ignorance due to his limited power. This is what I was just describing. The Lord is omnipotent, but the living entity is not. The Lord is vibhu, or omniscient, but the living entity is anu, or atomic. Because he is a living soul, he has the capacity to desire by his free will. Such desire is fulfilled only by the omnipotent Lord, and so when the living entity is bewildered in his desires, the Lord allows him to fulfill those desires. But the Lord is never responsible for the actions and reactions of the particular situation which may be desired. Being in a bewildered condition, therefore, the embodied soul identifies himself with the circumstantial material body and becomes subjected to the temporary misery and happiness of life. The Lord is the constant companion of the living entity as the Paramatma, or Supersoul, and therefore he can understand the desires of the individual soul as one can smell the flavor or fragrance of a flower by being near it. Desire is a subtle form of conditioning for the living entity. The Lord fulfills his desire, the living entity's desire, as he deserves. Man proposes and God disposes. The individual is not, therefore, omnipotent in fulfilling his desires. The Lord, however, can fulfill all desires, and the Lord, being neutral to everyone, does not interfere with desires of the minute independent living entities. However, when one desires Krishna, the Lord takes special care and encourages one to desire in such a way that one can attain to him and be eternally happy. The Vedic hymns therefore declare, Esha u yeva sadhu karma karayati tam yamebhyo lokebhya unnishate. Esha u eva sadhu karma karayati yam adho ninishate. The Lord engages the living entity in pious activities so that he may be elevated. The Lord engages him in impious activities so that he may go to hell. The Kaushitaki Upanishad 3.8. Similarly, the Mahabharata, Vanaparva 31.27 states, Agyo jantanisho yam atmana sukadukkayoho ishvara prerito gachet svagam vas abhram evacha. The living entity is completely dependent in his distress and happiness. By the will of the Supreme, he can go to heaven or hell as a cloud is driven by the air. Therefore, the embodied soul, by his immemorial desire to avoid Krishna consciousness, causes his own bewilderment. Consequently, although he is constitutionally eternal, blissful, and cognizant, due to the littleness of his existence, he forgets his constitutional position of service to the Lord and is thus entrapped by nescience. And, under the spell of ignorance, the living entity claims that the Lord is responsible for his conditional existence. The Vedanta Sutras 2.134 also confirm this. Vaishamya nair grinye nasapekshatvat tatahi darshiyati. The Lord neither hates nor likes anyone, though he appears to. We did that already. So, very illuminating verse and purport. So Krishna is not responsible for what we do. We're in this rebellious condition. And he's trying to help us. He's with us as super soul eternally. And when we come to the human form of life, he's giving us good advice from within. And even from without, because we can't hear him from within. But we're free to ignore that advice. Just as we approach so many people with these books, and some of them take the books, a smaller number actually read the books. And even after reading, people have their own ideas, and they say, well, I don't, this is too much for me. 4 regular principles, no, I'll pick an easier course, whatever, But none of that solves the problem. The problem of life, which is to get out of this bondage. I was thinking about the Alzheimer's. Not that I'm gonna, I've started to forget things, but so far I'm still pretty aware. My shlokas are still there, mostly. But just how you read about this, and it's such a devastating experience. Someone you love and you've known all your life, and it's kind of slipping away from you. They don't know your name. They forgot all these experiences that, you know. What is that really? It's almost like slow death. Because death is just forgetting. It's just you completely forget your previous life. Then you have to learn everything new, right? But because it's natural, you know, we don't identify that. But that's really what happens. Here's the person, you're identifying with them, their body. You know, everyone's on the bodily concept. But the person is slipping away. They don't know who you are. You know, what are we really? So if you woke up one morning, which I think happens sometimes, you know, and you forget who you are, what you're supposed to do, you know, where your job is, or you know, what happened? You know, it's like a critical problem. We are, in many ways, our memories. You know, when you remember who you are and you get up and you do that, you take on your life again every morning. So, in essence, it's kind of something we can learn from if you look at it. I mean, I don't wish it on anybody, and I hope it doesn't happen to me or you. But that's what happens when you die, is that suddenly you forget everything, and you have to start over again. And you know, according to your karma and what you create in your mind, you're going to be in a certain family, and then you're helpless. Whatever they trained you this way, that way, language, you know, environment, you know, tragically, so many people end up on the street, you know, whole families. So many things happen. But the point is that while knowing the science of Krishna consciousness, we have a chance to craft our consciousness in such a way that it'll actually take us to the best place, but to speak of a good place. That's our freedom. But it only works if you have the knowledge and you have the faith that the process is actually going to help you and work. And there's so many influences that can take away your intelligence or damage your faith. You know, there's so many people who came in touch with this movement, who actually got initiated even, and they just fell away for one reason or another. You know, they're doing something. Their experience in the temple back in the 70s or whatever it was, you know, that was just a phase they went through. A different part of it. Although you can't really forget everything. You know, many devotees who did significant service and then deviated for one reason or another, they came back at the end. You know, when they had some fatal disease, and they wanted to be in the association of devotees. So it's a battle, you know, between our higher self and our lower self, you know, because you carry with you the conditioning. It's so hard to really overcome it. But at the same time, if we have, you know, we're determined to have good association, to stay with it, to chant, you know, we're praying really that influence will win out over our lower selves, you know. It's a struggle. That's what sadhana means. The sadhana means a practice in which you need to apply your will and overcome, you know, the difficulties. So it's not a slam dunk, but it, you know.
Body is a form of bondage.
Oh, for real, for sure.
So is memory.
Huh?
So is memory.
Yeah, memory is part of the mind. Yeah.
It's kind of like a blessing when you're passing, I guess. Usually the body goes first, you know, and then the memory.
Well, yeah. I mean, usually the memory is decreased to some degree, but the thing is, it's what you remember. You know, we understand that it's the whole, as Krishna says, you know, what is it? Boy, see, I am getting senile here. Such important verses. All right, let's see. We're not going to forget this one again. Oh, here we go. 2 verses, 8.5 and 8.6. He's giving like the essential, you know, idea of Krishna consciousness. Antakale tamame vasmadan mukta kalevaram, page 349 and 350. And whoever, at the end of his life, quits his body remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt. So that's the whole purpose. You know, is cultivating Krishna consciousness so that when you leave it, huh?
That's what your memory should be.
That's that you want. That's the most. There's so many things in there, but that should be the most prominent thought. That they really. And then he gives a general principle: yang vapi smaran bhavam. That's remembering again. Chajat jante kalevaram tamevetika. Whatever state of being one remembers when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. So the devotees, who are serious, we try to reject those things that are just going to fill our minds with thoughts other than Krishna, and create, slow down our process of trying to become Krishna conscious. Because after all, especially at our age, you never know how much time you have left. It's a fact. I mean, we all have friends and people who passed away already. So that's. And here, he's describing here in the 15th verse that we just studied, that one should realize, put everything in perspective, that you can't blame Krishna, you can't blame God for our situation. He's doing everything that he can, but we're free agents. We can refuse, we can stay doubtful and just ignore it. But then we stay in bondage. That's the problem. We can have a little illusion of freedom, or we can surrender and realize that that's the real platform of peace and happiness. And that no matter what, if you stay surrendered to Krishna, then you're on the safe side. And Srila Prabhupada showed it. He went through so much, dangers and difficulties, but he was unflinching. And he showed us how you can actually get through and be successful.
Many devotees die of Alzheimer's.
I don't think there's a special. Many we have to get ready for the kirtan. It's not that, but that we've had devotees who practically maybe had a stroke or something. They forgot everything, except chanting Hare Krishna. Oftentimes that's all they do. The stroke, yeah. There was this one.